it's get rich slow is what it is,
Yep.
you know, and I think a lot of people, and I'm shot out of a cannon, make no mistake, I am. But a lot of people, when they get into this, they get so gung-ho and they listen to Grant Cardone and they get obsessed, and then all of a sudden they realize that each house is only going to be like $300 a month, and they're like, dude, this is too hard, and then they quit, you know. And so I already mentioned the fact that yes, it is difficult and it's hard and it's a slow boat, but if I can say, you know, I am living proof that it can be done, you know. I mean, patience.
You're listening to the Azreia Show. If you're looking for quality real estate investing information that you can trust, you've found it. Stay tuned and join the tens of thousands of members that have already benefited from Azreia, your home for education, market information, support, and networking opportunities that will advance your real estate investing career.
Welcome, everyone, to another episode of the Azreia Show. We are excited to have you here on today, and we are excited because, as always, in Arizona, it's a bright, sunny day, and we enjoy that. We love to get those sun rays. So we have our co-host, Executive Director Mike Delpreet here as well. How you doing, Mike?
Hello. What's up?
All right. And we have Luke Carl that is based out of Destin, Florida, and he has over 200 units. And we're going to be talking about residential rentals. We're going to talk about how he got started, how he built everything up, how him and his wife has transitioned from traditional rentals to short-term rentals briefly, but we're going to have her on to talk specifically short-term rentals. So without any further delay, Luke, how are you doing, sir?
Awesome. Fantastic to be here. I'm in sunny Florida. Not sunny today, though, unfortunately.
You know what? It's funny because I was just there over the weekend. I was down in Fort Lauderdale, and you guys had some wind and some clouds while I was there.
Yeah, it's a weird time of year. It's like that. It's like we're recording this in the middle of January, and we have this one little pocket of the year where we're reminded that the cold does exist, and we're living in that right now. And pretty soon it'll be blazing hot again.
Yep. Well, it was still humid down there. It wasn't as humid, you know, but it was still humid. So, yeah. All right, Luke. So, man, give us the backstory. What did you do prior to real estate?
Yeah, I've done it all, man. I owned a bar in New York City when I was 25 years old. I come from a very humble background in rural Nebraska. I turned 20 years old. I said, I'm moving. I got basically thrown out of college, and I said, I'm moving to the biggest city in the world. And that's what I did. And I lived there for a long time, 15 years, somewhere in that neighborhood. I was in, like I said, owned a bar, rock and roll bar.
Okay.
And then I met a girl from the South, and we moved to the South and started buying real estate. And that's really what it was for me. All of a sudden, it was like, okay, we went from $1 million, $2 million, 400 square foot box to, you can actually buy a house and do something with it. And
right.
Moved to Tennessee. She was from Mississippi originally.
Okay.
Avery, of course. My wife is Avery Carl. She wrote the book Short-Term Rental, Long-Term Wealth, and she's like the short-term rental girl. She's the one. She'd be happy to come on your show. But anyway, we ended up in Tennessee. We bought a house to live in, and then next thing you know, we got hooked, man. I just got hooked, and we started saving our pennies, did it the old fashioned way, worked our rear ends off, a lot of early mornings. And in the early days, we really did kind of a little bit of Dave Ramsey style stuff, which I'm really not, it's not my thing to do the Ramsey. I'm not really that penny pinching kind of guy, but when we first started, we didn't have a choice. We didn't have any money. So we said, we want to buy another house. We rent this thing out. How are we going to do that? So we saved up our pennies for a couple of years and just started diving into buying rental properties. But first one was a long-term single family outside of Nashville. Okay. Back then you could actually buy a house in Nashville that made money. You can't do that anymore.
Right.
But this is early 20 teens, I guess. Very early, probably about 2010, 2012.
Hey, Luke, can I jump in?
Yes.
You tell us your whole life, man. I got to take it back. All right. New York City.
Yeah.
Come on. You can't just glaze over.
My wife's there right now. As a matter of fact, it's not the same as it used to be from what I understand. But
I bet. So how long ago was it when you had the bar in New York City?
I moved to New York 2 months after 9/11.
Okay.
I remember vividly the event and how tragic it was, and shortly thereafter, I was on my way.
So I won't go deep. Like, I have the music background, bar scene background. So I was in the nightclubs, the rock and roll bars. So I have that experience. So, to go to New York City, one, two, to open up an establishment in the city, I can only imagine what that cost and how hard that was. And then to run it, right? Like, I mean, what's your favorite drink you pour, man?
Yeah, man. Those are days well, I got kids now. Those days are long gone. But
you still had a favorite drink you poured, though.
We poured a lot of whiskey and cheap beer. It's a little dive bar,
Love it, man.
And it wasn't my dough. I worked for this woman that owned five bars on the same street, basically, and she was getting ready to open a new one. So she brought me in and said, "Hey, you've been kicking, you've been doing a good job. Let's do this together." So that's how it worked out.
And what did you learn from the bar industry that in business that you hold with you today?
Everything. I learned everything. The biggest piece of it sounds like we're speaking the same language here. The biggest piece of it for me was judging character. People walk in that bar, and you could know pretty quick whether this was somebody you wanted to hang out with or not.
Trouble.
And then 2 hours later, they're hammered, and all the true colors are coming out.
Right.
Love it. Awesome. All right, I just wanted to dive in there really quick.
Yeah.
Okay. So you got the first property in Nashville, and you got hooked. You got hooked from there. So what was that second property, and how did you said you penny pinch, saved, everything like that? Kind of tell us that story, because we want to speak to, in the beginning, those who are trying to get that first rental, and then how you scaled it, pretty quickly.
We've done it all as far as down payments are concerned, but HELOCs, 401k, the whole gamut. But the second property was actually a cabin in the Smoky Mountains. This was back before anybody really even thought to do such a thing, because Airbnb was brand new at the time. As a matter of fact, if you look at my Airbnb profile, it says 2012, and Airbnb kind of really got going in about 2011. So I was an early adopter. Mm-hmm. And I still, to this day, that first one I bought is the longest running Airbnb in the Smokies, and I own that. And
awesome.
Yeah.
Wow.
That just, again, has to do with marrying a girl from the South. I'd never heard of it. You know what I mean? We were living just a little ways down the road, but she's like, they got cabins out there. We were going out there to the mountains on the weekends and stuff. And she's like, they got cabins. And I'm like, well, let's do this. So we started looking around and saving our pennies again. And I couldn't tell you how we got that second one, honestly.
Okay.
We sold some stuff. I sold a car, an old car. I had an old hot rod, a guitar, and we just pulled it together. And it was probably a year or two after that first one anyway. But yeah, we bought this cabin out there in Pigeon Forge. And at the time it was like, unheard of, this Airbnb thing, and nobody was really doing it. Verbo, yes. Verbo's been around almost 30 years. So we bought this cabin and put it on Airbnb and Verbo, and it worked. And then the rest is history. Next thing you know, it just went nuts. And then, of course, Avery started selling them. She's an agent, one of the biggest agents in America for many years. And then we created a short-term shop eventually, which is her team of real estate agents that sells real estate. And we teach you how to put the short terms on the internet and make money with them and that whole thing. But yeah, for me, man, we got that first cabin, and then it's like, dude, how do I get the next one? And we didn't know. So we did in this back in the day when rates were stupid low, and we did a HELOC on our primary and used that to buy our second cabin. And then our third one, there was a 401k. I did have a day job after the bar business. I got into radio. So I was working in radio for many years and had technically a W-2.
Gotcha.
And so cashed that out and bought another cabin. And then we brought in a partner, did a couple with him, ended up buying him out later, or he bought us out, and we 1031 that money into another one. And the story continues from there.
Gotcha. So you were just doing it step by step, figuring it out along the way, man. That's good. And it's good that you have your partner, your wife. Do you guys ever run into times where you say, you know what, I think we should buy this, and she say no, or vice versa? And how do you guys solve that issue?
Excellent question. In the early days, yeah, there was a little bit of that. I will say it was mostly the opposite, because it was always kind of my job. She was busy selling houses. Like, she's been one of the biggest real estate agents in history. and she's really good at it. I mean, and you guys know the value of a good real estate agent.
Yep.
They're not easy to find. So I was buying them. You know, she was off doing her 3 phones and just, you know, nonstop all day, every day, just craziness. And then here I was over here doing my best to scrape together the rental income to get the next down payment and buy another rental house. And so that quickly kind of became my role as the guy that was going to, you know, because she was too busy and she didn't really, she didn't want to deal with rehabs and toilets, you know?
Okay.
Yeah, in the early days, it was like, hey, do you think we should buy this one? And eventually it became like, why are you bothering me with this? Just go get it.
Just go and do it. Yeah.
Yeah. And, you know, it's just all about systems. But there were definitely times, I'll be honest, where it went, like I said, the other way, where she would kind of nudge on me a little bit and be like, you know, it's been a little while since you get to the point where it's like, she's like, you haven't bought anything in a while. What's going on? Are you slacking off over there? What, you know, you're not doing your job, basically.
Wow,
so
that's good.
It was great to get to that point. Obviously, it was a lot of hard work in between to get to that point. But yeah, the husband and wife thing, we do get that a lot. And luckily, we were both always on the same page as far as, you know, buy and hold. We don't like to sell them. We like to keep them.
Good. Excellent. So go ahead, Mike.
You know, that's a good dynamic, right? Because like for selling, you guys had she had the real estate agent to make the cash, right? To make the chunks of cash. And you're out there, you know, building the cash flow and never selling. That's key, man. How'd you go from, because it sounded like you guys jumped into short-term rentals since day one almost. So so kind of backwards. Usually we all long-term. Oh, let's switch it up to short-term. So, and you guys did it so early. So how'd you get into the long-term?
So yeah, the first one was long-term. And then the second one was, it just kind of happened, honestly, because like we already mentioned, Nashville exploded, right? We were living like outside of Nashville and we wanted to do another rental property. And all of a sudden, like overnight, nobody's making any money in Nashville. It's just not going to happen. You know, the purchase prices went nuts and the rents kind of stayed relative. So it got to the point where you're probably not really going to make much dough. So we needed a new market. And the next closest town that would make money, at least what we found, was the Smoky Mountains and these rental cabins. So it really wasn't about short term for me personally. It just kind of happened because we needed to branch out, find a market that makes money. And it just so happened in that town, it was all Verbo, you know.
So you adapted. One of the key things in real estate investing, as the markets are always changing.
100%. And then we went back to long term, and we have always kind of commingled, really. Started buying stuff in Chattanooga and did that for a few years. And I've got, you know, Chattanooga's got a lot of duplexes, so I got a lot of those.
Okay.
And still have them. I've never sold any of them. I got a couple single families and 17 duplexes, I think, in Chattanooga. Awesome town. And at the time, it was close. You know, I was living like 2 hours away and self-managing with a day job.
Yeah, that was
from 2 hours away with a day job.
Yeah, that was going to be my next question was your management, because a lot of people get hooked on, you know, not self-managing. So you were self-managing. So what systems did you put in place to make sure, you know, you wasn't getting those 3 o'clock in the morning calls and 5 a.m. calls and things like that?
So it's different with short-term and long-term. And back then it was way different with short-term. Back then there was no management software. You know, now there's over 120 property management softwares in short-term. And honestly, what happened was about 6 years ago, these things kind of came out of the woodwork and it was a huge boom, and it was like a race to the subscriptions. So they just came out of nowhere. Now I think it's going to dwindle now. I think you're going to see a lot of those players kind of disappear because it's just not that big of a space for 120 of these softwares. But back then it was a little more difficult. You know, you could, I remember back in the day, Airbnb and Vrbo wouldn't even talk to each other. You're like, there was no way to sync your calendar. So if you got a booking on Vrbo, you'd have to run over and block it on Airbnb. So that was like the first thing in that space that was cool. It was like, I think it was about, 7 years ago, they came out with a calendar sync where you could drop an iCal from Airbnb to Vrbo and vice versa, and you didn't have to block the calendar anymore. And that was awesome.
The struggle.
It was uphill both ways in the snow. And now you got price slabs, you got all these, there's a million softwares to make short-term easier. So today I still have those in-house. Again, I'm pushing 300 units, personally owned with no partners. And I still keep the short terms. I have 8 of them. And big, most of them are pretty big. Like, you know, I got one in Destin, Florida. This is probably close to a couple $1 million, but it was a rehab. It was a labor of love. I'm not the kind of guy, at least like not back then, that could just go out and buy a $2 million house, you know,
Right.
But anyway, so I still keep those in-house. I have 2 people, you know, that work for me full time. One person, 3 really. I got somebody that does books in-house full time. And then I got somebody that is like my right-hand man. He kind of does, he's like a utility player. And then, and then I have somebody that does specifically the messaging with the guests and dealing with the day-to-day with the, you know, the couch is broken at this short-term rental. I need to call and get this fixed and that kind of stuff. So obviously I'm involved with their as well. We spend a lot of time on Zoom together, you know, like most of the day. If I'm not doing something like this, I'm on Zoom with these folks and we're just running a property management company is really what it is. But my long terms are all third party. So I've got long terms in 4 different states. And those are all third party. And then of course with that, you gotta manage the managers, you know?
Yeah. Yep. Absolutely. So Luke, how did you go from the onesie twosies? Hey, I'm picking up 1 a year, 2 a year, so on and so forth, to just boom. What was that boom? You know, what year did you just explode and say, all right, we picking up 20 units, we picking up 30 units in order for you to get to that, you know, almost 300 units? What clicked for you?
Man, so and big props to Bigger Pockets, Brandon Turner. I heard him say it the best because he always said everything the best and still does. But he said it's like a locomotive, man. And what it is that thing, it weighs 8 billion pounds and it is impossible to get behind that thing. And you feel like it's impossible to push it and gain any momentum. But it's so big and heavy that when you do start getting that thing going, it's impossible to stop. And that's exactly what happened with me. But if I had to pinpoint it honestly to one piece of advice, again, bootstrap the whole thing, like you said, and I'm very proud of that. You know, I come from a Midwestern. My dad went to Vietnam twice. He was a mailman. Wow. He had me underneath his truck learning how to change brakes when I was 5 years old, you know, and that's just grew up in a small little Midwestern town, you know, and just a corn husker. I'm a Nebraska.
There you go.
You know? Anyway, what catapulted it to where it is now, if to pinpoint to one piece of advice, it was a book from Mike Michalowicz by the name of Profit First. As far as like how to harness all this energy and put it to work and to get it to flow into the next property, it was all profit first for me. As soon as I figured out that it was like buckets of money, basically, is what he describes in that. I'm a Mike Michalowicz fan in general. I read a lot of books.
Can you summarize what the book's about? Just to remember.
And he's actually got one for real estate investors now too. As a matter of fact, anyway, he's just a business author. So the book is like this: you got 5 bank accounts for one business, and they each serve purposes. So for me, with the rental real estate was okay. The one bank account, the money comes in. I got another bank account. You know, like you could separate percentages into these other buckets, so you're keeping track of if you're making money or not. Right.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And so I was separating all the funds, and really the most important bucket for me was the buy more houses bucket. That was where I focused all my energy. That was a separate bank account, and all my energy went into making that thing grow. And so I do my math on how much each individual property would bring in for rental income, because guys, as you guys know, rental income is a slow boat to Richville. You know, I mean, nobody's going to like be able to. A lot of folks think they can quit their job after 3 houses and live off the fat of the land. It ain't gonna happen. It's just not gonna happen.
If I could say, repeat that again, man. Like it's like planting seed. You're planting seeds and watering them, and like, yeah, it takes time.
It's get rich slow is what it is, you know. And I think a lot of people, and I'm shot out of a cannon. Make no mistake, I am. But a lot of people, when they get into this, they get so gung-ho and they listen to Grant Cardone and they get obsessed, and then all of a sudden they realize that each house is only going to be like $300 a month, and they're like, dude, this is too hard, and then they quit, you know. And so I already mentioned the fact that yes, it is difficult and it's hard and it's a slow boat, but if I can say, you know, I am living proof that it can be done. You know, I mean, patience and read a lot of books and profit first is my recommendation.
There you go. So what do you see next? Carl, Luke, what do you see next? What do you and the wife have up to next?
Man, I'm trying to find deals. That's
true.
And I just had this conversation with a friend of mine, and the truth is deals are hard to find. And man, when I first started, everybody makes it sound like the noobs coming in now. They make it sound like we had it easy, back in 15 years ago. But it was just as hard back then. I made 15 offers before I got my first investment property. It was different. It was definitely different. Yep. 8% interest is different,
True.
In a lot of ways, it may not be worse, but it is definitely different. In some ways, it definitely is worse. But what's next for me? I'm happy where I'm at, honestly. For me, I started buying apartments a few years ago. I've got 9 apartment buildings now, and I'd like to get more of that. And I still do buy single family long-term rentals, which a lot of people, they get a career like Grant Cardone. Hell, he's going to buy a single family long-term rental. He thinks these big guys, they kind of think it's a waste of time. I love them. Love a 3 ranch in the school district, and I scoop them up all the time. I got 2 under contract right now, and again, once you get that down payment factory going, it's a beautiful thing. But now again, long term or multifamily, man, good luck finding a deal. Where do you guys stand on that? Like, where do we stand on the state of the economy? I'm sure you talk about it constantly, but I'd love to hear your opinion.
Sure. You want to kick in, Mike?
So I guess it would go market specific, right? Like we're here in Phoenix. So, the market's slowed down, man. It's not like we've been in a seller's market for like 13 years, so now, it was in June or July, the interest rates doubled, which all over, right? So, which I think impacted everybody. And we just came to a standstill. So the buyers are on the sidelines, the flippers are on the sidelines. Even the sellers are unrealistic right now. So you're kind of in this point where the sellers don't want to drop and there's no buyers coming in. So you're just kind of like trying to find a deal as well. Right. So, that's how it is kind of here in Phoenix, if that's kind of what you're getting at.
Yeah. And then, even in other markets, it's the same way. I was actually talking to one of the biggest realtors in Illinois, and that was the same thing he was saying. He was like, man, the market just turned very, very quickly, and it's slow. It's no activity. The waters are just flat. It's stale. So it seems like everybody's just waiting for some consistency. Once we find out, all right, interest rates are going to be consistently at 6.5%, then people can run numbers on that. But with them fluctuating so much, it's hard to look at a deal because you're like, all right, well, if we run the numbers here, by the time we close or get the financing in place, it may be another point higher or a 1.5 higher. So it's really just the dichotomy of people just waiting to see kind of what the Fed is going to honestly do and be consistent with that.
Yeah,
nailed it. I 100% agree with exactly what you just said. Sorry.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Where are you? So you're saying you're always buying. So are you buying in Tennessee or are you buying in Florida?
Mostly in Alabama and Omaha. I buy multifamily in Omaha. And so if anybody has a deal, send it my way. I'm a buyer like everybody else.
We got someone in our group, Deal Finders Club, actually has access to a deal in Alabama right now.
Yeah.
Okay. I'm because I'm in the like.
You're in the hook.
10 minutes from Alabama.
Yeah,
I'm basically in Alabama. So, but yeah, I totally agree, man. I think what happened was, the economy, the world's never seen a bigger, boom in real estate and buyer's market, our seller's market, right? Never. I don't ever think it's ever going to happen again. And we're not going to go overnight from what we had to the buyers being, in control. And I think the sellers are definitely not feeling it right now.
Yeah.
I'm having trouble where, not only are my interest rates 8%, give or take 7.5%, whatever it may be. That's the least of my worries. It's nobody's selling and nobody's buying. In one of my markets, I do a lot of research and things. It was 1/5 of the amount of properties that sold in fourth quarter 2022 versus fourth quarter 2021.
Wow.
And I got to believe that's just because people aren't buying. But I think it has a lot to do with nobody's really listing. I don't know. How's it going down where you guys are? Are listings happening or what's the deal?
There's more listings now because one thing here in Arizona, we've always had a supply issue. So that's and it's even kind of keeping things even though it's not hot, like I think of last month or last couple of weeks, we've actually been in a seller's market, not because the buyer demand is super strong, but just because there's not enough houses. But there has been an increase in listings though.
Okay, that's good.
Yeah, but those listings are still a little unrealistic. They still listed per 2022, you know, Q1 of 2022 versus Q1 of 2023, you know? So, last question, Luke, and we'll let you go, man. We want to respect your time. What do you identify? What do you use as markers to decide on what market you're going to go in? Because you're in Alabama, you're in Florida, you're in Tennessee. Is there some specific identifiers you use to pick those markets?
Yeah, so when it comes to short term, I buy where my wife likes to go on vacation, because in my opinion, really, if you're doing short term, the way I do it, like a kind of luxury, you know, like a nice house close to the beach, you know, $800,000, some, you know, in that neighborhood, it doesn't really matter where it is. There's so much technology now. All you need is a good cleaner and you can get rocking. So that I like to buy where I like to go. Okay. I do have a little bit of economies of scale, like in the Smokies. I have 5 in the Smokies, but I love the Smokies. And then when it comes to long terms, to me, it's one of two things. It's within 3 hours of where you live, like we talked about before, is a great way, especially for single family. And then also, as I get older and I've got kids now and things have changed, I want to make sure that if I'm buying a lot of them or buying multifamily, like a campus of apartment building, it needs to be in an area where I know really well, like where I grew up, which is where I'm buying, or somewhere I want to go back to, or somewhere I have roots of some sort. Okay. Like say your mom lives there, or maybe your son grew up and moved somewhere. You know, me personally, I'm not going to just buy something because it's a good deal. I want it to be tied to somewhere that I have roots in the market, or it's a few hours from where I currently live is what I'm looking for. Perfect.
Sounds good. So Mike, any closing questions?
Well, hey man, if anyone get no closing questions, man, just bring Luke some deals, right?
Yeah, bring me a deal. I'm a buyer.
He's a buyer. That's what we all want, as a real cash buyer, especially as wholesalers. And yeah, man, how do we get a hold of you?
I have a podcast, Short-Term Rental Management is the name of my podcast. You can find that wherever podcasts are found. And other than that, I keep a pretty low dad profile. I'm just like a dad, you know. So, but at shorttermshop.com. And of course, boss lady, she's always around, easy to get a hold of. And we have a pretty big YouTube channel as well.
Oh, what's that called?
Yeah, what's the YouTube?
Just the Short-Term Shop. The Short-Term Shop on YouTube. And I post videos on there, you know, management related, like how to deal with bad reviews and things like that.
Perfect.
Well, thanks for being on, man. Really appreciate it.
My pleasure. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, yes, thank you, guys. You know what to do. Luke gave us some good information. Thank you, Luke. Always get out there and take action.
Thanks for listening to the Azreia Show with your hosts, Marcus Maloney and Mike Delpreet. We hope you enjoyed this episode. If you found this information valuable, head over to Azreia.org and learn more about our community.